My name is Dawn. People say I'm eccentric, but I disagree. We are a family of 3, my husband, son, and me. My in-laws live in the main house on the same property. I'm an ordinary housewife. I got married to my husband 20 years ago. We met at work. He was already a senior manager when I joined. For a fresh graduate like me, he looked unapproachable. His image changed when we had an office party. I heard he was from an Irish background, so I thought he was a drinker, but I was wrong. When I went to pour wine into his glass, "Just pretend, but don't pour in, thank you," he shyly said with a red face from alcohol. Compared to his usually stoic face, "You are quite adorable," I blurted out. His eyes were wide open and his already red face flushed brighter. Adorable? That's a first. He seemed extremely embarrassed. I fell for him at that moment. We became more familiar with each other in the office, and eventually, "Would you like to go out for dinner with me?" He asked me out. He was 30 years old at the time. It supposedly took tremendous courage for him to ask a 20-year-old. He cared about the 10 years age difference, but I didn't think much of it. On the contrary, I was happy to have a boyfriend who was mature and I could rely on. We got engaged after 2 years of dating. We first announced it to my parents, who lived 3 hours away by car. Then I was going to meet his parents for the first time. They had a huge house in an affluent neighborhood an hour away. "Wow, what a big house! You grew up here?" I was so excited to find out more about him. Seeing me animated, his mother chuckled. "Such a cute girl. Come inside." Wearing an elegant pink dress, she looked much younger than her age. My husband had already informed his parents. "I want you to meet my fiancé." Before we came, so they were in a merry mood. I quickly felt at home with them. "Have you decided on the venue?" his dad asked. "Not yet. We are planning to start looking around soon. We want to invite only close friends and family, and make a small wedding that we can cover with our own savings," he answered. His mother's face turned serious. "That's not acceptable. It's supposed to be once-in-a-lifetime event. It's the occasion to invite as many people and celebrate together." To which my husband sighed heavily. More and more people are having a cozy wedding nowadays. Besides, we'd rather keep our savings for the future instead of spending all for the wedding. "I don't care about the trend. I wouldn't want to attend such a boring wedding." His father intervened. "We shouldn't meddle with their plan. Let them do whatever they want." "I'm sorry about my wife, Dawn." I sensed a heaviness between the parents, so I cheerfully said, "No, not at all. It's all good." When my husband followed his father to the study, my mother-in-law mumbled, "How did an immature child like you seduce my son?" I was spaced out from exhaustion, so I thought I heard her wrong. Looking back, it was the first sign of a bully. My husband explained about his mother afterward. She came from a prominent family that migrated to the US in the 18th. The family was faced with tragedies in the 19th and eventually dispersed, but she still carried the value from her upbringing. When I was talking to her, I was often reminded of it. Luxury goods are high quality. Saving money is miserable, she repeated. Every time I heard her favorite phrases that were different from my value, I was just amazed by her. Having an extravagant wedding was politely declined though. After our wedding, we moved in with my parents-in-law. Even though we were living on the same property, Joe and I had our own cottage behind the main house, so we were independent of them. I got pregnant 6 months after our wedding and quit my job right before I gave birth. I wanted to focus on my child. Joe had no problem with it and even said, "I'm gonna work harder now." After I had my son and stayed with him at home all day, I realized something. My father-in-law still worked, so it was normal for him to be out during the day. My mother-in-law, who never worked in her entire life, was also out, and I rarely saw her at home during the day. She normally dressed up and went out for lessons and lunch with friends. Sometimes she came by the cottage and dropped off designer brand gifts for my son and Joe. Around this time, she added, "I don't have enough allowance again this month," and "Don't tell my husband," two her favorite phrases. As for the presents, Joe had a specific taste, so even if it was from a nice brand, if he didn't like it, he never wore it. The baby clothes too. I didn't see a point in buying expensive ones, as my baby outgrew them fast. I almost told her to not bother splurging if she didn't have enough allowance. But I knew she would have gotten upset with me, so I kept quiet. Whenever she came over, she always asked me about my plan for the next days. My son wasn't even in preschool, and we mostly stayed at home every day. She knew it well and expected me to say I had no plan. Then she normally asked, "So can I ask you to clean my house? You have nothing to do, right?" I didn't have a valid excuse to decline, so I had to oblige. She asked me this once a week and always made me promise, "Don't tell my husband." Whenever I went to her house to clean, it was always dusty and messy. I used to mop up a corner of the living room first, and then set up a baby gate to put my son in. What am I, a maid? Maid. Sweep, wipe, and repeat. Sweep. My son and I sang, and when he looked bored, I let him watch TV. I was determined to clean the house spotless. When I was done, I had no energy to do anything else. My maid life as such continued for a little while. It came to an end thanks to Joe. One day, when he came back from work earlier than usual, he found my son and me in the main house. "Who do you think she is? A maid?" He scolded his mom. I was so happy to see him standing up for me that my frustration flew out the window. She learned her lesson and never asked me to clean again. Instead, she hired a professional cleaner to come regularly. I was astounded to see how adamant she was to do it herself. When my son started his preschool, I used my freedom to work part-time. My mother-in-law frowned and criticized me. "People think my son's not making enough money, and your poor son will have a lack of parental affection." I normally didn't argue with her, but for this one, "Joe makes enough money. It's my choice to work. I want my son to see that his mom is capable of multitasking." She still looked displeased and mumbled, "The job of a mother is to be pretty and affectionate." I shrugged her off. I put effort into my part-time job and increased my work hours according to my growing son's schedule. Seeing me hard at work, Joe and my son started to share housework with me. I was very thankful to them. My son eventually became high school senior. and studied hard to get a scholarship to the university he wanted to go to. I informed my parents and in-laws about his achievement. Just when I was relieved and melancholic about my son, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced. What a grandson I have, a scholarship. He's becoming an excellent man like his father. Thank you very much. We are so proud of him. I invited her to sit in the living room and then sensed something strange. She came to congratulate him, but she didn't bring any gifts. She liked to show off, so she secretly continued to bring expensive sweets and clothes even after the cleaning incident. It was very weird for her to come empty-handed for such a big celebratory event as this. She asked, "Where are he and Joe?" "School and work. It's a weekday." "All right, you're alone today." I couldn't figure out where she was going with the conversation. Then she suddenly made a serious expression. "You know that endowment life insurance you've been paying for the education. You said it's coming to the end of term, right?" "That's right." "Can I borrow that money in secret? My husband's salary has gone down recently because of the recession. I don't have enough for my recital, and also my friends and I have been planning a trip. Just a small amount like $5,000. $5,000? I was flabbergasted by the nonchalant way she mentioned the amount. "Of course not. I can't let you borrow such a big amount." "Well then, a couple of thousand would do. I heard the policy gives you like $100,000. It's not a lottery. What Joe and I saved is coming back. But there's also a scholarship. You should let him pay for his own education anyway. I urgently need that money. I should be the priority." She was being illogical and wasn't taking no for an answer. I unusually became upset with her and firmly said, "Absolutely not." I apparently made her grumpy. "Fine." She stood up and grimaced at me. "You're such a heartless, stingy person. Your son raised by such a mother won't have a good future." I couldn't calm down even after she left. So I opened a can of beer while cooking dinner. Even though she didn't have the money, she couldn't stop splurging. I always knew she was trouble, but I tolerated her to keep a good relationship. I had been telling myself that she had a different upbringing, but she ignited my anger this time. Just because her selfish request was declined, she made a ridiculous remark about my son. I told Joe what his mom said to me word for word after my son retreated to his room that night. "I've been keeping it from you, but I lent her money before and she hasn't paid it back yet." "Wait, you too?" It became clear that both of us had a small amount of money owed. Since we lived so close to the parents, we didn't want to create an awkward atmosphere by refusing her. I guess she knew and took advantage. I can't let it go this time. Me neither. I'm fed up with her. We felt bad for Joe's father, but we agreed on moving out of the cottage. "Hey, hon, there's something I really want to do before we move." I proposed a plan to retaliate against her. I was going to make her regret insulting not only me but my son as well. My determination was burning. I prepared the necessary evidence in a month. After sharing them with Joe and my son, I finally started my plan rolling. It was the first weekend of July. I aimed my visit to coincide with dinner time, so both my mother and father-in-law would be at home. Joe and I told them we had an important thing to discuss. As soon as we sat down in their living room, Joe pretended to be remorseful. store made a mistake and opened some of your mail. They were wrongly put in our post. We are very sorry. I produced 5 envelopes and a folded paper on a coffee table. Oh no, my mother-in-law gasped. The envelopes were from credit card companies and IRS. I selected ones that said important and urgent from the mail I had collected in a month. Our mailboxes stood next to each other, so the mailman sometimes mixed up. When he saw me cleaning the yard, he didn't hesitate to pass me 2 bundles. It was easy to differentiate mail related to her financial issues from seeing them for so long. Hence, I picked the top 5 for this occasion. Oh my God, you haven't been paying all of this? My father-in-law frowned at his wife. As I expected, he had no idea how much he has been squandering. She stuttered. It just slipped my mind, that's all. I'll pay them tomorrow. She made a lame excuse and hurriedly collected the envelopes. As Joe and I were leaving, I pretended to remember something and said, "Oh yeah, there were a few with immediate deadlines. I'm very sorry for not coming sooner." I gave a big smile to my mother-in-law, who was grimacing at me from behind her husband. 2 weeks later, she purposely came over when Joe and my son were out. I was expecting her visit, so I greeted her as usual and let her in. As soon as she walked into the living room, "Please do me a favor. Can you make a payment for these on my behalf? You know, I'm quite busy and can't make it to the bank on time." She pulled out the bills in front of me. Those were taxes for a property and a car, and credit card bill for online shopping. The number of bills was, for sure, more than when I showed to her and her husband. "You don't need to go to the bank, you know. I'll show you how to pay with online banking." I suggested light-heartedly for my first retaliation, and then added more. "Also, you've shopped with my credit card, haven't you? I saw a charge I wasn't aware of on my statement. I'd never bought anything from Saks Fifth Avenue online. Besides, nothing arrived from them but the charge." I thought it was skimming, but then I remembered she loved the store. She bought it with my card and gifted it to herself. It was a fraud. She was shrewd when it came to money, but her wrongdoing was to be caught sooner or later. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Do you have proof?" "I can call customer service and find out what you bought. If the same item is in your house, that's proof, isn't it?" I smirked. She choked, but then, "Fine, I'll pay you back. But these are more urgent. The taxes must be paid now. We are family. We support each other, right?" "Family?" I exclaimed in a deliberated manner. "I'm almost single. I'm not really your family." "What do you mean?" I put on a sullen face and explained to her in a gloomy tone. "Joe and I have been fighting about our finance. He's very upset with me about the money I lent to you, thinking I splurged. But I can't tell him the truth or cover it with my part-time salary. Our relationship deteriorated and we are separated now. We are filing for a divorce." To which she became angry. "You never consulted with me. I knew a younger but no common sense wife would be nothing but trouble." She left fuming. But she didn't give up and kept bothering me. Using the same "we are not a family" excuse, I continued to refuse her, who demanded money like she was above me for whatever reason. Eventually, it turned August, and I moved out of the cottage alone. My son moved to another state to attend university in September. And then Joe moved out immediately after. The three of us had all gone away from the in-laws. I heard they had a serious talk after we left. My father-in-law told me the whole story. Dawn told me the reason she and Joe are divorcing is that you owed them money. You stole her credit card and her pay off your shopping. Do you even understand the seriousness of what you did? She became outraged by his accusation and snapped back. Not at all. She was my daughter-in-law and living in the cottage for free. I expected her to cover for me. I only bought some cosmetics and supplements anyway. It was supposed to be our secret, but I can't believe she told you. Joe is right to divorce her. I know now. You're a malicious woman. I want a divorce. I don't need such a nasty wife for the rest of my life. Let me check all our finance. Well... He went through the file she had kept and found their inactive investment funds with zero balance. All of her credit cards were maxed out, and she hadn't been paying, or just the minimum if she had. He couldn't believe the level of her atrocity. I kind of predicted the situation, even though he had a managing director title at work. He was working at an ordinary company, and I didn't think his salary could support her splurge. I assumed he had a big loan or touching the money she wasn't supposed to, or both. When she had an eye on my son's educational savings, I figured she was in critical financial situation. I was right. My father-in-law sold the property and paid off her debt in the end. He was able to divorce her without alimony or distribution of property. However, knowing she had never worked in her life, she didn't feel comfortable throwing her out without anything. So he gave her $10,000 to start over. Joe thought his dad was too easy on her, but $10,000 must have been gone in no time if she had no income. She despised working, but loved showing off and buying expensive gifts for people. She would be penniless sooner or later and be on the street. She deserved it. As for me, I'm currently enjoying life in a new apartment along with Joe. Divorce was a deceit. To make it more real for mother-in-law, I moved out alone at first, but moved into a new place Joe and I bought. It was a good timing to coincide with my son going away for his university, so we put a down payment with our savings and bought a newly built apartment. Our new life is amazing. I don't have to be a maid and clean my mother-in-law's house or be asked to pay for a mysterious facial massage tool she bought. Having no bothersome relationship, Joe and I enjoy our second honeymoon period. We don't want to deceive Joe's dad, so we've told him about our plan. It's only the mother-in-law who is made to believe. We have no intention of telling her the truth or where we live. We honestly want nothing to do with her for the rest of our lives. After selling the house, my father-in-law lives in a small apartment. He's looking to move closer to us. He has been nothing but kind to me, and we never had any problems, so I'm looking forward to having him nearby. We are planning to visit our son over the next long weekend. I'm surrounded by my favorite people and enjoying my life to the fullest. It's my best time by far.